Rebalancing growth, the U.S. quest for new economic engines. The era of debt-fueled economic expansion is reaching its natural limit. For decades, the United States relied on a combination of monetary stimulus, fiscal deficits, and asset inflation to maintain the illusion of uninterrupted growth. But as interest payments on the national debt consume an ever larger share of GDP, and as traditional productivity gains lag behind, a fundamental shift is required. This exposition argues that the United States must transition from a system of extractive growth, driven by monetary inflation and nominal GDP engineering, to one rooted in true innovation. The challenge is not just economic, it is existential. Can the U.S. reorient its strategy before financial constraints become structural collapse? The answer lies in identifying and mobilizing around new economic engines that produce real output, enhance productivity, and preserve purchasing power. 2. Comparative monetary archetypes. 3 monetary systems offer insight into the options available. Switzerland. The Swiss National Bank, SNB, has adopted a defensive strategy. By setting interest rates at zero and halting monetary inflation, it discourages foreign capital inflows that would strengthen the franc and hurt exports. With a near-zero CPI, Switzerland has effectively frozen the monetary base and prioritized stability over growth. This is a hard money stance without the pretense of stimulus, a fortress strategy to preserve value. Japan? Japan has followed a very different path. With decades of ultra-low interest rates, ballooning public debt, and persistent quantitative easing, the Bank of Japan has engineered a form of monetary stasis. Inflation is now returning slowly, but growth remains anemic. Japan has accepted stagnation as a policy choice, using monetary policy to prevent collapse rather than stimulate expansion. United States. The U.S. represents a third model, high nominal growth, driven largely by debt expansion and money printing. Inflationary tailwinds have boosted asset values and nominal GDP, but real productivity gains are scarce. As CPI remains elevated and real wages stagnate, the illusion of prosperity becomes harder to maintain. Without a pivot, the U.S. risks drifting into a late-stage fiat spiral, rising debt, reduced real returns, and eroded trust. 3. The U.S. bind, monetary expansion versus productive growth. The core problem is simple. Debt has outpaced productivity. The national debt exceeds $37 trillion and continues to grow. Interest payments now rival military spending. The Treasury must issue increasingly larger amounts of long-duration debt, but demand is weakening, driving yields up and crowding out private sector growth. Meanwhile, inflation-driven GDP boosts only worsen the problem. Higher nominal GDP triggers higher spending expectations and higher interest payments, but without the ballast of real productivity gains, the entire structure becomes unstable. Monetary expansion without productive output is not growth, it's erosion. In this environment, purchasing power becomes the true measure of economic success, not headline GDP. Section 4. Identifying the next growth engines. To escape this bind, the U.S. must identify and commit to new sectors capable of delivering exponential productivity. 3 standout candidates. 1. Blockchain plus digital asset infrastructure. Potential to rewire global finance, legal contracts, and digital property rights. Tokenization of real-world assets, RWA, decentralized finance, DeFi, and programmable money. A pro-innovation regulatory stance could make the U.S. a global hub for trustless coordination systems. 2. Genomics plus life sciences. Personalized medicine, AI-driven diagnostics, CRISPR-based therapies. U.S. leadership in biotech and pharmaceuticals already strong, needs deeper investment. Unlocking health span and reducing long-term care costs could shift economic burden downstream. 3. Advanced robotics plus automation. Domestic reindustrialization through robotics and precision manufacturing. Labor productivity gains via autonomous systems in logistics, agriculture, and defense. AI plus robotics convergence equals multiplier effect across sectors. These are not speculative bubbles. They are the next infrastructure layers. Like electricity or the internet, they will enable downstream value creation at scale. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. V strategic leverage versus tactical panic. The critical distinction for the United States now is this: will it act with strategic foresight or continue reacting with fiscal panic? Since 2020, stimulus packages, quantitative easing, and pandemic-era policies have propped up markets and consumption, but they've done little to build durable economic foundations. These were tactical responses, often necessary in the short term, but unsustainable in the long run. What the U.S. needs now is strategic leverage, long-term investments in innovation ecosystems, infrastructure, and education, not just emergency injections of liquidity. That means incentivizing capital formation in high multiplier industries, reducing regulatory uncertainty around emerging technologies, especially crypto and AI, rebalancing public spending toward innovation instead of entitlements and interest payments. Without this reorientation, the U.S. risks slipping into a high-debt, low-growth trap, where stimulus becomes a crutch and innovation a missed opportunity. VI, global implications and competitive positioning. The global stakes are enormous. Let's contrast the U.S. trajectory with two major players. China. China is executing a long-term strategy rooted in hard infrastructure, energy dominance, and industrial scale. It leads in solar, EVs, battery supply chains, and rare earth processing. Its digital currency, ECNY, and Belt and Road projects further entrench its influence. While it faces demographic and real estate risks, its state-coordinated industrial planning gives it a strategic edge. Europe. Europe's economy is hampered by regulatory sclerosis and energy vulnerability. It innovates at the margins, but without scale or speed. The EU lacks a unified capital market, and excessive bureaucracy often strangles breakthrough technologies before they scale. United States. Despite its fiscal imbalance and internal division, the U.S. still holds dominant cards. World's most liquid capital markets, deep talent pool in AI, biotech, and financial innovation, cultural dynamism, and entrepreneurial ecosystems unmatched globally. But advantage is not destiny. It must be converted into execution. Conclusion: the strategic imperative. The post-pandemic world has exposed the limits of debt finance growth and central bank intervention. The United States can no longer rely on monetary expansion to mask structural stagnation. The time for extend and pretend is over. Rebalancing growth means returning to fundamentals, producing real value, not financial illusions, investing in productivity, not just protecting asset prices, nurturing innovation that strengthens both domestic resilience and global competitiveness. Blockchain, genomics, robotics, these aren't buzzwords. They are 21st century coordination layers that can anchor a new American industrial renaissance, but only if the U.S. moves with focus, not fear. The window for transition is narrow, but it is still open. Now is the time to act.